BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing
Welcome
with Sean
to
K.
the 101st episode of BSing with Sean K. And I'm your host, Sean Kneese, only I don't usually talk like that. I just felt like doing that. But yeah, Happy New Year. And this is episode 101 of the BSing with Sean K podcast, where I talk to musicians, bloggers, activists, artists, comedians, and other creative people who are living outside the box and pursuing their creative and intellectual passions. And for this episode, I'm going to play you a conversation I had with Matt Namer of the band FMs. Here's a clip of one of their songs, Change Your Men Up. In this interview, Matt talks about the music of the FMs and also their experience being a non-binary person and how that transfers into their music and lyrics. And we took a class at the Pit together, an improv class at the People's Improv Theater in New York, Improv One, and we talk a bit about that. That's where we met. And anyway, I won't give too much more away. Here's the interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Joining me today is Matt Namer. Do you want to tell us about yourself and how we met and how you got into music?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thanks for having me on your show. It's really fun and exciting to be doing this with you. And so I guess we can kind of start maybe with where we met. Right. So you and I met at a improv class together, which was a lot of fun. We had a great group. What was the name of the team that you kept?
Mr. Whiskers, because I did that
Mr.
voice.
Whiskers.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Because it was the exercise where you point to the person across to you and you say Mr. Whiskers, and you point to the person to your left. I think it is. You say Whiskey Mixers, and whenever I said Mr. Whiskers, I went Mr. Whiskers. So then the pit teacher said that whatever team I'm on for the show, we have to have the team named Mr. Whiskers.
Yes, it was very popular. Yeah. The way you said that was very, very popular indeed. And it was a really fun class, and it was really great to get to know everyone in there. It was great to connect with you. My brother and I kind of decided to do that class together. And we had a blast in it. I'm primarily a musician and kind of took this improv class just for kind of, just to try something different, do something fun with my brother.
Did you think it would help with music at all? Because I know your brother does music too, right? From what I understand.
Yeah, he does. There's music doing a different band. He actually hosts a musical improv class on Wednesdays, which is kind of a separate thing. But I don't think that I necessarily thought that it would improve music. I think that there was maybe a part of me that was maybe I'm really funny and I don't know it, and I have this sleeper talent. But I think that kind of what I learned in that class is that, natural skill helps a bit with all the things that you do in life, but just like anything else, like improv or acting or comedy, these things take a lot of work to really master them. So it was really great to kind of have that experience and get to be in that class and be okay, well, I always thought I was pretty funny, but the people in this class are at least just as funny as I am. Maybe funnier at times. There's definitely like a few people I think that were like definitely probably more meant to be doing this than me. So that was like kind of cool, and I had a blast in that class. Usually what I like do interviews about is about my band, the FMs, which I guess we can like sort of talk about. You were asking me with your first question to sort of like just sort of explain a little bit about who I am. Basically I have a project called the FMs, and it is a band that themes a lot around gender, fluidity, sexuality, kink, different societal issues, personal issues, and we're pretty loud, pretty proud, pretty experimental at times, kind of dark at times, and electronic, but also very much in the rock vein. One other thing I guess I can mention about that right now is that the name, the FMs, kind of stands for the female males, or the femmes. So it's kind of this idea about the duality of gender and kind of reversing that and crisscrossing it and playing around with that. I identify as non-binary, and was an assigned male at birth, and my other lead singer in the band identifies as a trans man and was assigned female at birth, and so we thought it was kind of interesting coming at gender from sort of different assigned places in our life and meeting somewhere in the middle on this sort of fluid spectrum, which still sort of plays into this concept of duality a little bit.
So, you mean that by non-binary, you mean like you don't conform to, I guess, either gender role, or like you're fluid between both genders, or?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Yeah, that is exactly correct. I don't necessarily know how further to elaborate on that, because you kind of hit the nail on the head.
Okay, yeah, and I guess that's is that something like, I guess you always, like you've always known, like even when you were young, or is that something you discovered later in life, or?
It's a good question. I think that definitely, I think around the time, for me at least, like the time that I hit puberty, I didn't like fully feel squarely in the male camp. And it's sort of hard to explain because like, I don't think that I'm like a trans woman, for instance. I don't fully identify as female either. And it wasn't really until like way, way later in life that I even had like heard the term non-binary, or like kind of knew like what would be the best category of like gender that I felt most aligned with. But I definitely would like have, fantasies about like being a woman sometimes, like even when I was like 13 years old. But they weren't like all the time necessarily. Like there was some times that I felt fine being like feeling more male. So, fast forward to 20 years later in life, and I, kind of today I'm talking to you and have finally sort of figured out what I think identifies me best.
Does that come out, I guess, in your lyrics a lot? Do you talk about like your own personal experiences with that, or like what I guess you talked a bit about your lyrics and like what your music deals with. But I guess maybe just go more into that.
Yeah, absolutely. We just came out with a music video for one of our songs, Change Your Men Up. And that song is definitely about it's pretty clearly kind of like a down with the patriarchy anthem. If I had to describe it in one sentence, but definitely a lot of our lyrics theme around that. We have a new song that's coming up off our new album, which is probably going to be released later this year, called Bad Girl. And that one is pretty much about how there is an impossible standard for femininity, that pretty much anyone you talk to has some idea about it, whether it's, you're too girly or not girly enough, or, trans people can't ever truly be women. And then people that are maybe like AFAB themselves are, and just cis, like always identified as female, like even they have people in society that are trying to tell them how to be the right kind of woman or be the right kind of femininity. So I think that song in particular, Bad Girl, it's just it's sort of a calling to all of us just to kind of remind all of us that no one is going to achieve this like standard of femininity in our society. It's absolutely impossible to do because everyone has a different standard for it.
And have people like listened to the music and said, like, come out and told you like, oh, they related to the lyrics you put out, or or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. The reception to that has been really wonderful, and a lot of people. I think that when people in general see, us being out there and sort of being very open about our gender expression and fluidity and all these things, that it sort of like helps inspire them. Like if they have any interest in that themselves, it really kind of like helps them be. It sort of helps pave the way a little bit for them to feel more open about these things. We've definitely had people, come up to us at the end of our shows and say like, hey, I'm also non-binary, or I'm also trans or queer, and really felt that they like resonated with the music. So it's a really wonderful thing when that happens. I feel like in general, if you have a pulpit to sort of like say anything, and ours is not like generally like a huge pulpit, but to be a musician and to have lyrics at all and to get to perform in front of people or to get to like have songs that you record. Some people at least are listening to the things you say. And I think it's sort of like important to always like speak from the heart and to have a point to what you're doing. It's nice to kind of like be able to use that platform for something positive in the world.
So I guess you're saying you feel artists have a duty to maybe to have some sort of message or with their music.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm not going to be so dogmatic to say that like you can't ever write a love song or something. I think that generally people tend to resonate more with art that is honest. And so if you're kind of, I know this sounds a little cliche, like the speaking from the heart type of thing, but people really do see through it when you are holding back as an artist, if you're not really sharing like fully like what's in your heart and what you really want to express. It's like not really that interesting if you're holding back as an artist. So I think if your truth is, that you're really depressed because your girlfriend broke up with you, like no one's to say that you shouldn't make art about that, For me, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about our society and our world, and how my own journey with gender fluidity and sexuality has sort of like existed in that world, and where we're heading as a society in different ways, that it would be dishonest for me to not share those things. And so I really just try to not let fear get in the way as an artist, and just try to express whatever truly I feel is in my heart to express.
Like being who you are and owning it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, definitely.
So what has your experience been like playing shows, and what kind of venues have been the most, I guess, positively receptive to you?
Yeah, I mean, we've produced a lot of our own shows. We've been on, just sort of taking it outside of the concert stuff. We've been on there's a queer radio station in Vancouver that we got to be on. I think that it would be cool if we did sort of get to play more queer or trans focused venues. But ultimately, I think that we've played in a lot of different kinds of clubs across the city. There's a party series that I've produced called Subvert, which is a kind of underground music show that has live music, and also has kinky play spaces. So sort of mixing different elements within one event. So you have your sort of live music, but also sort of have your place for people to express themselves, express their sexuality, and be part of the whole experience as well, not just kind of come to a show. So we've done that, and that's been really a lot of fun, because we've done that on a old ferry boat in Brooklyn, which is really fun, sort of underground venue to do that at. And those events have had up to a few hundred people at them before. So we've had a really kind of a diverse amount of places that we've played at. We've done this festival in Pennsylvania for the past few years, which is kind of like more of an EDM sort of burner festival. We've played with a lot of gothier sort of industrial bands, which our music kind of sits somewhat in that universe, but I don't really think it's exactly that. It's definitely dark and kind of electronic, but doesn't really, I feel make goth or industrial aren't really the right labels for us still. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I think that there's been a lot of different places that we've been able to play, and a lot of different venues that we've been at, and just being in a band, it's in today's world, it's an interesting experience. There's all kinds of different things that end up coming up. Today I'm doing an interview with you. So yeah, I think kind of exciting to see where 2020 is going to lead, and what kinds of interesting things we'll have in store for that for us.
And what do you find is the best way to promote shows like that? Is the internet the most useful way?
I think that probably the internet rules everything nowadays, pretty much. I mean, the only other way that you would really promote a show nowadays besides the internet is by like flyers, I guess, or just other shows.
Oh, like promoting.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's all on the internet. It's Facebook. It's our email list. It's mostly those two things. I would say Instagram is also a big one. Twitter. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I mean, it's nice when people discover your music on the streaming platforms and then find you that way. Sometimes we have our shows listed up on those streaming platforms depending on what the venue is.
Oh yeah, and I think I told you I came across your music before I met you, like on Spotify. It came up.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's awesome. It's always super exciting to hear that.
And it's also you have glam influenced or glam glam, is that like glam rock that you're influenced by, like the look, or was that's just what I read in your bio.
Yeah. Yeah, we did write that in the bio. I think that it's funny because the term, I don't think that our music is very like glam rocky. That would be a kind of bad description of our music. But I think that people often think of us a bit as glam because we do kind of dress a bit non-minimally, I suppose you could say. We tend to dress fairly loud. But also, it's just kind of a little bit a part of our gender and sexual expression. So I guess that, and I don't necessarily like this, but I think that if people see someone like me who presents mostly as male, but kind of like dresses in more female clothing for shows, that they immediately kind of like think of that a bit as glam, which seems a little silly to me, actually. So I don't know. I mean, I think that when you think of glam, you think of like David Bowie probably immediately, and definitely David Bowie's been a big influence on us, although that's tough as well because Bowie had his like Hunky Dory and like those albums, like Aladdin Sane, all that whole era was definitely like what you think of as glam rock. And then I think the sort of like phase of Bowie that is more kind of influential to us is like kind of the Berlin era Bowie, which like isn't really glam rock. It's not. It's still Bowie, but it's not really like glam rock. So I don't know. Descriptions are tough. You really, people. I've literally answered this question about like how to describe our band and our music like thousands of times, and I still can't figure out like how exactly I want to do it. It's
just a lot of like older stuff, right? Like 80s, 70s. I guess you're influenced by more older music than contemporary music.
I wouldn't even say that's true. It's probably a good big mix of stuff. I definitely do really like 80s synth music. I love this. I love the way analog synths sound, and that gives you a bit of a like kind of a bit of a retro sound, obviously. But then there's a ton of artists that are using analog synths today. Music has sort of gotten to this place where people are just sort of interested in like good music now. There's like there's not as much movements and things, I think, that are happening.
I guess because there's so much out there and it's more readily available, so it's hard to have just one thing be the main trend.
I think that's part of it, and I actually honestly think that part of it is just music technology. So if you kind of look at the history of music throughout any time, like whether it was in the 1700s when the piano was invented, like music technology, like the music itself was always kind of changing because the technology to make music was changing, right? So like we like went from the Baroque era of classical music to the classical era of classical music, like around the time the piano was invented, and then composers generally started like composing all this really dynamic music because now they had like a keyboard that could really capture really soft notes or really loud notes. They're writing these things now that had all these like dynamics, whereas if you listen to like Bach and stuff, there's not as much dynamic range going on in that music. You know, you have the classical stuff where it's like dun 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 dun, you know, like that impression.
Yeah.
So and then you know, and then like going into the 20th century, each new decade, or there's the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, it's like tons of music technology that was being created that was totally changing the way bands were making music. Like so when we think of like 70s music, it's really a lot because of like the technology that was being used to make the music at the time. And if you kind of skip forward to like about the year 2000, now we kind of have all of these digital music making tools at our disposal. And I don't know that like music technology itself is like changing in a way that is like making music change anymore. And so I think that's kind of why like I could tell you if I heard a song that was like made in 1984, I could probably be like, and I'd never heard the song before, I could be like, well, the song was probably made like between 1983 or 86 or something. Like you'd kind of like have an idea.
Yeah.
Whereas like from 2000 to 2020, like if it was made in 2002 or like 2019, I couldn't tell you. Like I don't know, you know?
There's no real like sound of this era or even
right.
10 years ago, really.
Yeah. So my own personal thoughts on that are that, you know, people aren't like super interested in like trying to find something that's like trendy or anything like that. I think that they're just more interested in like really good quality music. And obviously that's not like everybody, right? There's plenty of people that listen to terrible music. There's plenty of people that listen to the same things that you'll hear when you walk into CVS. That's like what they have in their car. But I think that you know what we're just trying to focus on is just making stuff that's good. I don't know if it kind of sounds modern, it kind of doesn't. I don't know. Some people say our music is a bit throwback, and other people sort of think that it has elements of that and sounds pretty modern. So I don't know.
And what do you have planned for the near future with your music?
Well, we're going to be releasing an album this year, and that's going to be really exciting. Not sure when exactly that's going to be yet. We just finished the tracking for that and are currently mixing it. It's going to be 12 new songs. We've been working on this album since probably like spring of 2017. So it's kind of been ridiculously long process. I think I've personally spent over like 1,000 hours working on it. And I'm really excited to release that album.
Nice. So it's like different. Is it like a change from your previous releases, or is it like similar in a lot of ways? Or I guess just a progression of your usual sound.
I think that what I strive for, like when I listen to bands, and I definitely am a bit classical in the sense that I really do appreciate the artwork of like the album, like the concept of the album as a piece of art. And I think what I always loved with bands is when you could hear a song from a band, right? And you would know that that song was not only like by that band, but that you could kind of tell like what album that song belonged on. So I think it's really cool when like sometimes you'll hear like, you know, a band will come out with a new album and you'll be like, wow, is this even the same band? I can't even tell that it's the same band. You know, and that's probably like taking it a little too far. But I do really like it when albums from album to album like have a unique sort of like different progression, a unique evolution. And what I'm hoping is that when we release these 12 new songs on our new album, that people could listen to that and listen to our first album and say like, yes, I can tell which song each of them belongs on, you know?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, kind of having each album having its own signature, I guess is the way to say it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's been the biggest challenge being a musician and being in a band?
It is ridiculously hard to be a musician nowadays. It is ridiculously hard to make money from anything. It's ridiculously hard to get your name out there. I think what I'm really trying to focus on now is partnerships. I think that, you know, really having a community is essential for anyone to be successful in music and in probably a lot of other artistic fields. It's really hard to just go out and try to do everything on your own. So I think for 2020, what I'm really trying to focus on is building more community around music. And that's a challenge in itself as well. But I think that that's one that will hopefully pay off.
Like a network of other musicians supporting each other.
Yeah, other musicians, other artists, other people like in the music industry, other producers, other engineers, other fans, you know, people who appreciate music. So yeah, it's just all those things, you know.
And I think you talked about like how the band got together at the beginning, right? You talked about, I don't know if you talked about like how you met and formed as a band.
I didn't talk about that yet. Okay. So interestingly enough, Frankie Rex and I, who's the other lead singer of the FMs, we met in high school and we're in each other's first band together. They were actually the drummer in this kind of stone rock band that we were in called the Violent Orange. And yeah. And so that's how we met. And we actually had like years where we weren't really like talking to each other. just like not really hanging out. And kind of like a few years ago, we reunited and kind of formed the FMs together. Lucas, our drummer, happened to be living across the hall from me, so got really lucky on that one because he is this incredible Berkeley trained drummer. He's been in like a million bands. He can just like play anything at all. So he's just amazing. And then Michael Butterly, our synths and samplers, and he was actually somebody that we met through like 3 degrees of separation on Facebook.
So then, so that's how it all came together then, I guess.
That's how it all came together. the 4 of us. So, each person in a different way. It's kind of funny that Frankie and I have known each other for so long. But yeah, that's sort of how it all came together. That was about 2.5 years ago.
And you said the high school band was like the Orange something? What was it?
The Violent Orange?
The Violent Orange. And that was more like a different style, though, than the FMs.
Yeah.
That was, you said like stoner rock, or what was it?
Yeah. Stoner rock. It was, are you familiar with that genre?
I know like stoner metal, like like Electric Wizard and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, so similar kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that
like,
was your first band, so that's like where you got started with playing and being a musician.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
It was like pretty bad band at first, and then probably like by the end of high school we started to like get kind of good. And then we all like went off and started doing our own things, right? We just started getting kind of good. But Frankie actually was like drumming for us back then, and they're this incredible singer songwriter. So we reunited in the FMs, like we pretty much had them doing more of that. They're singing a lot. Their voice is so amazing. They have the most incredible voice. I think they're a much better singer than I am, actually. But we sing a lot together in the band, and they play guitar, and I think that's definitely musically more their calling.
So is there any other project you might want to do in the future? You think FMs is just going to be your main thing you do?
I definitely want to do. I have tons of ideas for other musical projects. I just like haven't had the time to try and do them yet. So I definitely do want to do other stuff. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what I can muster the time for.
So anything else maybe we didn't cover, or anything else you want to discuss before we wrap up?
I think it's probably helpful just to tell people where they can find more of our stuff. So you can look us up. We are on most music streaming services. So if you wanted to go to like Spotify or something, you could type in the FMs. So THE space FMS. Our website is thefmsmusic.com. Our Instagram is @thefms. And our Facebook page is thefmsmusic.com. Or sorry, no, that's our website. Facebook.com/thefmsmusic.
All right, cool.
Oh, and also let's not forget about youtube.com/thefms.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the BSing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, I hope you enjoyed the first BSing episode of the new year. And I know that in the beginning I played a clip of their song, of the FM's song, Change Your Men Up, but to close out, I think I'm going to play Kill the Code, which is my favorite, probably my personal favorite track off their latest release, and here it is.
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already had proved very useful. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it will take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded.
Alrighty, and that's a wrap. It's been a while since I've played a full song on this podcast, but I felt inappropriate to do so in this case, and I think I might do that some more in the future. But anyway, Happy New Year, and you can follow me on social media, BSing with Sean K. It's the same on Instagram and Facebook. And go to bsingwithseank.blogspot.com. And there's also a link to the podcast on my main website, SeanKneese.com, SeankNeese. And you can subscribe to BSing with Sean K on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartMedia. And I think I'm on some other platforms too because I joined Anchor and it put me on some others. Anyway, I'll catch you on the next episode.
BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean